set it there.
Cut! Ribbit!
And cut.
Cut.
Cut. Terrific.
Cut.
And cut.
Cut. Let's try it again.
And cut.
Cut. Check the gate.
Cut it. Cut.
Welcome to Cut, Just Another Movie Podcast. I'm Manny.
I'm Angie.
And we're two siblings that love movies. Oh boy. How about them Oscars, Angie?
It was certainly an Oscars.
Before we get to the nitty gritty, I have to talk about how we're streaming on all platforms. We also do a video podcast on YouTube, so you should definitely subscribe. Just search Cut Movie Pod and you're able to find us. Also follow us on all social media platforms. We're on Instagram and on Twitter at Cut Movie Pod, where we post clips and teasers for the next podcast and just behind the scenes stuff that we're working on. Having said that, I teased our last episode, which is all our Oscar predictions, about how because there wasn't a front runner, that chaos was going to ensue in the Oscars, and that it was going to be a while to finish. I didn't think that it would involve people hitting each other. We're obviously going to get to the elephant in the room, but I don't want to turn this into a podcast about who said what, who did this. There are plenty of other outlets that are talking about it. And yes, we will mention it and give our little 2 cents, but I want to celebrate movies, which is what the Oscars should be. And unfortunately, it's going to be remembered for something that was, in my opinion, just really disappointing to see and just completely distracted from why everyone was there. And I was just thinking about, any kids that were watching or any kids that were in the Dolby Theater, how parents are going to have to explain like what the hell just happened, But anyways, I want to start off with our thoughts about our predictions and how close we got. So Angie, what was your final score?
My final tally was 17 out of 23, which
That's
I think is
pretty
probably the best that I've done.
Yeah.
What did you get?
We did a little bet, $50.
I lost.
She definitely lost. So my final tally, and I have it right here as evidence, are fake Vanity Fair ballots. I got 21 of 23. I should have gotten 22 out of 23 because for original song on the podcast, I said that No Time to Die was going to get it, that Billie Eilish was going to get it. And at the last moment, I just thought the power of Encanto was going to be too much. And I changed my vote at the last minute. So if I hadn't changed it, I would have gone with your 22 or 23. This is also, I think, my best score ever.
Yeah, I think
if not,
so too.
it ties it. But I was really proud of myself. I hope you guys listen to the podcast and, let us know if you won some bets against your buddies, won your Oscar polls at work.
Yeah, which I would say our predictions as far as what would win were pretty spot on.
Yeah, we really nailed it, I think.
Because if you guys remember, we did both what we think is going to win and then what we wanted to win. And
Right.
I think as far as what we thought was going to win, we did pretty well.
Yeah, and I think this was the first year where I really went that route, and I sort of went against my instincts of like with my heart. Although Coda, who was the big winner that night, I still voted with my heart a little bit because it had been winning, the Producers Guild, and leading up to the Oscars, it had some momentum, but I still thought that The Power of the Dog would pull it out at the end. So I went against what I thought was going to happen, and I went for that one who I thought would win, and it pulled it out, and I was super stoked about that. We're not going to go super detailed into each category. I think we're just mostly going to talk about moments that stuck out to us, including just how the ceremony went and things that we liked and we didn't like. So let's start at the top. Beyonce was nominated, and I had a feeling that she was going to open the show, even though this isn't the Grammys, which a lot of people had complaints that, why are we starting off a movie award show with music, a musical number? But it was cool because it took place in Compton, and it was a shout out to the Williams sisters, where they came from. I don't know if I was a fan of the colors, where it was all tennis ball green.
Yeah.
I think I still would have liked it though for it to be live. It was obviously taped, but I would have liked it if it was like on stage live and in the room and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. I did like it though, because it the choreography was really good. And I don't know if you guys spotted, but Blue Ivy was like right in the front at one point. And then I liked how they had all the strings were green, like the same kind of like neon green. It would have been cool if they had the rest of the instruments that neon green, but I know that it's hard to make flutes green like that. So, but I did enjoy it. I think I hadn't heard the entirety of Be Alive before, because I don't think I listened to it all the way through when I watched King Richard. So I liked the song. It was a good song.
We had 3 Oscar hosts this year. We had Amy Schumer, Wanda Sykes, and Regina Hall. I thought they did a decent job overall. I think when they were together, I could sense some kind of inconsistencies with like just their personalities and how they didn't kind of really mesh. But I think where they really shine is when they were individually. Like all 3 of them started at the same time, and then there was like a mini reintro with Amy Schumer by herself, and I think that's where she kind of did a lot better than when it was like the 3 of them. But coming into it, I thought it wasn't the greatest idea to have that many hosts, because again, after the beginning of the show, you kind of forget about them, and they do come in and out every once in a while, but it's really the opening of the show. And because you did have Beyonce start it, it kind of felt like
Hard act to follow.
yeah, it's kind of had like, we had like a false start, and then, okay, now we have the show again, and we have the host and all that. But I think they did a decent job overall.
I think so too. I will admit that when they announced who the hosts were going to be, I hated it, because I was like, I don't particularly like Amy Schumer. I don't particularly like Wanda Sykes. I like Regina Hall, but it was just kind of weird to pair all 3 of them together to me. Whereas, like you said, if it was like 2 of them or like 1 of them, just the fact that it was 3 of them was kind of, it seemed like a lot. And I was kind of like, how are they going to make this work?
Right.
Like you were saying, it was pretty much just the beginning. And then you kind of saw them throughout the broadcast, but not really, which I was kind of happy about. I didn't want them to spend a whole lot of time on bits, even though some of the bits were just like really stupid.
They
like
really fell flat.
The Kirsten Dunst one where she's a seat filler, and the Regina Hall one where she was like feeling up everyone. I was just like, this is weird.
Well, that's kind of leading into the incident, as we're going to call it. But that was the beginning of the triggering of events, because Regina Hall had that bit where she's like, I got this note, and since she's single, she just started naming off a bunch of attractive.
She was like, you need to go to the back to get tested for COVID.
Yeah, that's what it was. She started listing off a bunch of male actors that were attractive, and it was like, I forget who it was. Timothy Chalamet.
It was like Timothy Chalamet, Bradley Cooper.
I think she mentioned Javier Bardem, and she's like, oh, but your wife is here, like you get a free pass. But then it ultimately got to Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith. And there was that moment where Regina Hall says, oh, Will Smith, you're on the list. I know you're married, but your wife says it's okay. So come on up. And he's like, no, like,
yeah.
So, right. They both laughed it off. But I feel like that planted the seed of what could possibly happen later on.
There was a similar joke at the BAFTAs that Rebel Wilson said. And it was something similar along the lines of like, you know, Jada and Will. And everyone kind of just went like, oh, like in the audience. And she was like, guys, he's not here. And like, that was just kind of like the end of the bit. And so I felt like that was kind of going to be the butt of the joke award season, because he was nominated, which is unfortunate. But I mean, it happens.
One of the early upsets was for animated short. I know you had Robin.
I did.
And so did I.
The one that I wanted to win was the one that won. So I was really excited about that.
Which is the windshield wiper.
The windshield wiper was the one that won. And like I said earlier, like I said in the previous episode, the windshield wiper is about love, basically. Like it starts with the question, what is love? And it's animated, but it kind of reminds me of like Waking Life, Linklater's Waking Life. Like just the animation is kind of like that. And it's a bunch of different vignettes of, you know, different people in love and what different people think love is. And so I thought it was like a really sweet kind of animated short, which is why I wanted it to win. And then it did, which I was shocked. I didn't think it was going to win.
Another early winner of the broadcast was Ariana DeBose, who became the first openly queer woman of color to win an acting Oscar. She gave, I think, one of the great speeches of the night.
I think so too.
Where she just talked about our family and ended it with, you know, if there's anyone out there that doesn't feel like they identify with the people around them and doesn't feel included, there are people that are open to you and that'll make you feel like you belong. And I thought that sort of, I wish would have set the tone
Yeah.
for the rest of the night.
It seemed like it was going to.
But the thing is like with everything that happened the last hour of the show, you almost forget that even happened.
Mhm.
And that's another reason why I hated what ended up happening.
Yeah.
Because it totally took away from all of that. During the build up to the Academy Awards, ABC was teasing that we were going to have all these reunions. So we were going to have the Godfather reunion, and then we were going to have a 007 60th anniversary thing. We didn't really know what it was, maybe minus the Godfather. I figured like Francis Ford Coppola would be there and Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, which they ended up being there. I was really underwhelmed by the 007 thing because it was
too.
just a montage.
Yeah.
And then they couldn't get any of the 007s to show up, you know, just to wave and say hi and then just walk off stage.
Like if they got Al Pacino out there,
Right?
I feel like they could have.
And Robert De Niro, who's like hates doing
yeah.
interviews and doing these live events.
And speaking of montages, you were talking about the 007 one. The Godfather one was kind of just like all over the place. Like I felt like the cuts were weird with the montage, and then the music that they picked to go on with it was weird. Like
Also
they could have
having
just
P. Diddy introduce it.
they could have just kept the
Really?
original score, like, or done like a remix of the score. I don't know. It just felt like it just didn't work.
And it was funny too because when P. Diddy introduced the Godfather anniversary, that was right after the incident with Will Smith and Chris Rock. And he even said like, all right, guys, like Chris, Will, we're gonna deal with this like family at the Golden Ball or whatever he called it. And then it's like, oh, but here we go.
The Godfather.
The Godfather, a story about families and killing each other and tons of violence. And I just thought that was like super funny. I thought the montage wasn't very good. And the thing is like the Oscars ceremony always has the best fucking montages. That's one of my favorite things.
That's one of my favorite things too.
And even the 007 one was just a bunch of shots and I don't know, it just kind of left me wanting more. And then we had more reunions. We had White Men Can't Jump, and we had Juno, we had Pulp Fiction, which were fine.
The Pulp Fiction one was kind of embarrassing. Like I felt like secondhand embarrassment.
Why?
I don't know. Like
Because
when
it was the 28th anniversary.
well, yeah, that was weird. And then like when Sam Jackson was like talking, and then like Uma Thurman and John Travolta were like in the background, like saying their lines from the movie. I was just like, I don't know. It just felt like really cheesy to me.
It felt forced.
It felt really forced. Yeah.
And then, guess what category they did? Best actor. The rest of them were like fine. You know, it was cool that they brought the odd one to me was like White Men Can't Jump. Because I don't remember it being nominated. I could be completely wrong. But that was kind of weird to have, you know, that kind of reunion. But it was cool to see like Wesley Snipes.
Yeah, that was cool to see them all together. Rosie Perez and Woody Harrelson. The In Memoriam was weird too.
Yeah, that's been...
Because you had like Jamie Lee Curtis with like the dog, which was
you hear that?
adopted.
Yeah, by John Travolta's son.
I did, yeah. And that was cute. But then there was like the weird like dance number in the middle of the In Memoriam.
And they had it projected behind them. So what took center stage was the dancing, and also the music selection was very upbeat.
Yeah.
It's not what usually it's something somber.
Yeah.
Something more emotional. I didn't like it. I think it took away from the people they're supposed to honor. And I just love it when it's like maybe one musician and then...
Billie Eilish did it like a few years ago.
Yeah.
And that was fine.
I mean, I know what they were trying to do to just make it more uppity and not as depressing. But I think, you know,
we want it to be depressing.
Yeah, it's just, you know, people that passed away and are gone. And
they had some notable people missing, is what I heard people were talking about.
They had
Norm Macdonald, Bob Saget,
Ed Asner,
Anne Rice, who people were like, she's an author, but she did this interview with a vampire. So people were upset about those.
As long as you work on a movie, like
Yeah.
you should be up there,
Yeah.
you know, regardless.
Switching gears completely to something that's far more upsetting than an In Memoriam montage was the two, they weren't even like categories because they didn't win Oscars. They were just kind of like.
Even though everyone online is like, they won Oscars.
They didn't. The first one was fan favorite, like movie. And the second one was cheer moment, like fan favorite cheer moment. And I couldn't find it looking for it, but I know there was one movie that was nominated for fan favorite that didn't come out this year. To where I remember we were watching it and we were like,
Yeah,
you
what
could
is
have
this
voted
movie
for
doing here?
anything. So that one, Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead one. And then for cheer moment, the Flash doing a Flash thing one, which looked dumb. Anyway, but yeah, and then there was like
And no one clapped, by the way.
No,
Like,
nobody
they
clapped
just showed it, and
for
I feel
the
like
cheer moment.
most of those people in the theater were like, what is this?
Yeah.
And we had to cut legitimate categories to sit through like a minute and a half of these like fake awards or fan favorite stuff. Like that's the thing that like really irritated me, that there was all this talk about, you know, cutting categories and editing them beforehand and all that stuff. And to end up with like the Snyder fans.
The show ended up being longer than 3 hours like it always
It
is.
ran
So it's just
about
like
3:40. So 40
why
minutes
are we
over.
doing this? Yeah.
Exactly. Another one of my favorite wins was for Troy Kutzer for Coda, which I think everyone saw coming.
Yeah.
If you listen to our last podcast, we majority said like he's gonna take it, and he did. And his interpreter, as he was walking towards the stage, his interpreter was like bawling.
Yeah, it was
and I was
really
surprised he could even translate
Yeah.
as he did on that big spotlight. But he also gave a great speech and talked about like teaching people dirty words and like that he couldn't really do it. Troy became the first deaf male actor to win an acting Oscar. The other actor that won it was Marlee Matlin, who plays his wife in the movie, and she famously won it in 1997 for Best Actress in her role in The Children of a Lesser God. So it was one of those like full circle moments.
Kind of like with Ariana DeBose as well. We kind of had
Yeah,
two of
she
those on
won
it.
for the same role that Rita Moreno won back in 62, 63, whenever the original West Side Story was. But yeah, it was like two beautiful moments,
Yeah.
Before the ceremony started, I set up a camera to record our reaction because we watched it here together. And I set it up to watch craziness happen, but not the craziness that ended up happening. More of if an upset happened or we had another Parasite moment where it was one of the movies that we're really rooting for to win it. And so the first time I think that we jumped out of our seats, or at least I did, was for adapted screenplay. And we're going to show, or actually, I think it was original screenplay first. Yeah. So we're going to show this clip. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see it. If not, you'll hear it wherever you listen to podcasts.
And the Oscar goes to...
I like that the background looks like a 007.
So the winner for original screenplay was obviously Belfast.
which I was stoked
Yeah,
about. I was
and-
so excited.
Yeah, if you watch this on YouTube, I jumped out of my seat and
Yeah.
I was like shaking my hands, and that was after a few brews. But I was so stoked, and that to me signaled that Power of the Dog was possibly going to lose it.
Yeah.
And I felt a lot better about my picks after that point. Winning after that was a Coda for adapted screenplay, which we were super stoked about.
Yeah.
And here's the clip for that.
And the Oscar goes to Sean Hayter.
You're waiting my one, though. Yeah, you guys won every single one.
Sean Hayter.
This is bad for Power of the Dog.
Yeah, it really is.
And again, this was another sign for me that, you know, and I think I turned over to you and said, like, here we go, like chaos.
Yeah, it was pretty intense after that.
We hit the 2.5 hour mark, and this is where Best Documentary Feature is presented by Chris Rock. And things go off the rails, literally. At this point, things had been going on I thought, smoothly. There weren't very many surprises. Belfast, you could say, was a surprise. Coda winning for adapted screenplay, slightly a surprise, but the rest of the categories had pretty lined up with our predictions so far. Chris Rock goes up there. He's being Chris Rock. You're not really thinking of it. You know, he actually made a joke about Penelope and Javier that if Javier won, it meant that he was going to lose anyways because his wife. If her wife lost, it wouldn't have
I don't
mattered
even
if
remember that
Javier
joke.
won. And he said, you know, Javier is going to be wishing that Will Smith wins. You
Yeah.
know? And so he's already cracking a couple joke, you know, that are already there. And so then he moves to Jada and Will, who are literally in the front row. They're the closest people
Yeah.
to the stage. Prime real estate for that awards show. And he says, I love you, Jada. Can't wait for G.I. Jane 2. And obviously it's a comment about her hair because it's shaved off. I didn't know that she was struggling with alopecia, which is basically your hair falling out. And I'm guessing Chris Rock didn't either. And that joke, it's a terrible joke. Like it's not
like
even
a dated joke too.
Yeah. How many people are gonna get G.I. Jane 2?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be us.
Or like them, I guess.
Because I chuckled a little bit
Yeah,
when you
well,
said it.
if you see the clip, for a while we're kind of like, haha, and then we're like,
Because Will Smith laughed.
yeah.
He laughs when they cut away from Chris, and she's not laughing at all. She rolls her eyes, and you can tell it bothered her. And then it cuts back to Chris, and he's like, "Oh, come on! Like that wasn't even like that was an easy one or whatever." And then you just cut to Chris going like, "Oh," and then you don't see Will Smith going up until they switch to like a side shot. And then you see Will going up on stage, and Chris has both his hands behind his back.
Yeah.
And he kind of leans into the mic because he's definitely not expecting.
I feel like he thought Will was going to tell him something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they were going to do maybe an improv bit.
Yeah.
You know? But then Will Smith winds up and he slaps the shit out of him, which Chris later says the moment right after. But it's crazy because I thought just the sound too seemed fake. It was so loud.
It sounded like he got punched.
Well, I thought that it was, at that point I still thought that it wasn't real and
Yeah.
that they had like manufactured the sound. It just
Yeah.
sounded too real to me for it to be real.
Yeah,
Like that's what
yeah.
I'm saying. Like it seemed like a bit
Yeah.
at that point. And even just the angle where the shot was, you couldn't really see if he actually hit him.
Yeah.
And then I remember our friend was like, did I actually hit him? Like it seemed, I don't know. It just didn't seem real. And then the moment where the feet start cutting off. So not only did we lose sound, but we lost the picture and it was just the Oscars logo.
Yeah.
At least here in America, obviously now you know that they're clips that were uncensored from like Japan and Australia. But here in America, the audio cut out and then it was just the Oscars logo. And so we're trying to figure out what the hell
What
just happened. And I think that's the moment when I started realizing that was real.
Yeah.
That this was not rigged. This was not a setup or anything like that. And we start all looking at each other and I think you get on your phone and like, or like on Twitter, like just trying to see. And then you see Chris Rock, like, again, we still don't have audio. He's just kind of mouthing something. And then they cut to Will Smith and that's when he's saying like,
And he's like yelling. And that's when that's when I was like, oh, this is like real. Because you can hear him like, yeah, you couldn't really hear what he was saying.
all I could read lips is he said something about his wife and fuck.
That's all
and so
I
was
saw too.
like,
And I was
and
like,
then
oh.
that's when you see Lupita Nyong'o in the background.
That was so
be
great.
like, go from like kind of smiling to like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
This is happening.
Yeah.
And so that happens. And then Chris is like, whoa, that was the greatest moment in television. And people kind of nervously cheer. And then he's so flustered at this point.
Yeah.
And he still has to introduce the category. And he's just like documentary, feature, Oscars. And he gets his words kind of mixed up. And then at one point he's like, just roll the clip. And then when he announces the winner, he's like, I hope this is right. You know, and then he announces Summer of Soul. But no one's even thinking about that anymore.
Yeah, I think that's the part that was really the most upsetting after what had happened, is that like everyone was so like shell shocked about what had just happened. Like even, you know, us at home, we were just kind of still thinking about what happened, and I want to know what happened and why did it happen and like all that stuff. And there's even a moment like where, you know, Questlove and his crew go up and Will Smith gets up to congratulate Questlove. And you can see Chris Rock's face and he's just like, oh no, he's going to come back up again.
Yeah.
Oh no. And it was just like Questlove gave such a really beautiful speech.
But
and
I
like no
couldn't
one
even
remembers.
pay attention.
Like I had to rewatch it the next day because I couldn't remember.
And all I could see is Chris Rock
Yeah.
to the right side of the frame in the background.
Yeah.
Just looked like, and I think he's still processing like
Yeah.
all of us were like, did that just happen? Did
Yeah.
he just like smack him in
And
the
he
face?
even like looks at someone in the audience and he goes, like
Yeah,
that's kind of like what he does.
Yeah. not only was like the moment that Will Smith struck Chris Rock just like completely shocking and insane, and to me it's the craziest thing I've ever seen at the Oscars. Like I've been watching it since like the mid 90s, and there have been, you know, people mispronouncing actors' names and getting the envelopes wrong and people tripping and falling and all of that, but I've never seen what I saw last Sunday. And it completely robbed Summer of Soul and Questlove of celebrating, and he gave a really heartfelt speech. And it felt like the Oscars shifted timelines in that moment. And now we're in this alternate reality, you know, post.
The vibes were immediately off.
Yeah, and I had a hard time remembering even what had happened before.
Yeah, I had to rewatch right after the slap the next day because I was like, what happened afterward?
I had to look at all the winners too, just to see like who had won.
And I think I saw someone on Twitter who was saying that he was bartending during the show, the Oscars, and he was like, everyone stopped drinking after that. Like nobody came to the bar after that.
Well, what's crazy too is that I got some news from inside of the room that like people were still trying to figure out like if that was legitimate or not.
Yeah.
And the air just really got sucked out of it. And now there was like a 44-minute. Oh, I turned to you and I said, dude, what's going to happen when Will wins?
Yeah.
Because that was like
right before.
There was like about a 44-minute gap. I timed it from the moment that Will hit Chris to them saying, and the Oscar goes to, and for Will Smith to go, there was like 44 minutes. And automatically, I think everyone's thought went, what's going to happen when Will Smith comes up? And then comes the Pulp Fiction reunion, which introduced who was going to win Best Actor. And obviously, we called it that it was going to be Will Smith. And I think everyone in the room knew it was going to be Will Smith. And they gave him a standing ovation, which I think blew my mind. It wasn't everyone.
Yeah.
I heard that there were some people that didn't clap and then some people stayed seated. But it looked like the majority of people, applauded it. And then came the weirdest speech ever because he starts crying and then he uses the word protect. He used the word protect a lot in the speech. And he started off by saying Richard Williams was a fierce defender of his family and really used like the whole Williams family to sort of justify
what he had done,
hitting someone for making a joke about their wife. And that's the thing that I didn't like. And besides him doing what he did, like I'm not cool with that either. But he used that to sort of like protect himself. And during the award season, he has been overly emotional. And he has brought up how he's had to protect the women in his life and then the two actresses that played Venus and Serena. And it was just kind of like all over the place. And it almost felt like a therapy session to me. Like this guy that's just kind of like just letting it all out. But it's happening at the biggest award show on the planet and in front of millions of people. And it just really just made it even worse. And also he apologized to the Academy, everyone in the room but Chris Rock, which is like, dude, the first apology should be to Chris Rock. He has since apologized. And that's another raw moment, not just for him. You know, he had been campaigning for this for a year. He came out with a memoir this year and he was really saying all the right things leading up. And I talked about this in our predictions podcast, how as cheesy and as dumb as it sounds, your acceptance speeches leading up to the Oscars do matter. Because people take him into account, and I know they shouldn't.
Look what happened with Jane Campion. I mean, she still won Best Director, but there was like a rift after.
Yeah, and people were starting to guess like maybe she's not going to get it, and so leading up to it, Will Smith was like fine, and then all of a sudden he just snapped in front of like a live.
Yeah, and I think it
event.
kind of robbed the Williams family of, you know, this kind of what should have been this beautiful moment, which, you know, again, I'm not them, so I don't know how they feel. They could feel completely different than I do. But that was just like me watching it, kind of like how I felt. I was just like, oh, that's kind of like a weird moment now.
Another crazy thing happened where Will Smith is giving his crazy speech and then there's a cutaway. Like we see the Oscars logo again.
Yeah.
And I was like, now what's happening? You know, we just had the incident now.
I was like, is Chris Rock coming out? Like, what is happening?
Yeah. And then it was like a nip slip with like one of the Williams sisters and stuff like that. And so it was just kind of like really fucking bizarre
Yeah.
on multiple levels. Going back a little bit, when Questlove won his Oscar, after the winners win and they go off stage, they go straight to the press room where you have journalists from around the world who ask questions. And the first person that asked the question kind of like was trying to ask what just happened, but kind of said it like, oh, congratulations. So you won this award, but obviously there were more events that happened. Like, what do you think about that? And Quest was like, I'm not going to talk about what just happened. And then the moderator that moderates all the questions basically said, after that journalist asked that question, said, we're not going to be taking any questions about what just happened. Which
I think is good, because it would have been what the entire night was about. And that would have completely overshadowed, it has overshadowed a lot of what happened. But, everyone in the press room, and even now, I'm tired of hearing about it. People who weren't even at the Oscars are getting asked about, well, what do you think? And it's just like, dude, just let it go. Leave it be. They figured it out. Just let it go.
I've been trying to find, I don't know if Will Smith even went to the press
I don't
afterwards.
think he did.
Because I tried to look online. There's clips of every person that won with the press minus the Will Smith. And I don't know if he didn't do it, or maybe they just don't want to show it because it's just going to create more questions than answers.
On the coattails of Will Smith's bizarre speech was another bizarre speech, which was Kevin Costner introducing Best Director. And
He took forever.
He took it started fine because he was talking about his first time at the movies, or his first time at an adult film, which was weird because we all thought he meant a porno, but it was just a movie for adults. And everyone even laughed in the audience when he was like, my first adult film, and everyone kind of chuckled. And then he kind of just went on and on and on and on for 5 minutes, and then finally was like, here's Best Director, which was super weird after an already weird night. And that's kind of the way that the rest of the night went. Jane Campion ended up winning Best Director, as we all predicted, even though, we were talking about earlier, it was kind of up in the air for a little bit.
And I think our picks were both Kenneth Branagh for Belfast.
Yeah.
If
those
there
were
were been an upset,
who we wanted to win was, yeah. And especially once they did original screenplay in that one, I was kind of
yeah, the door was open.
So it ended up being Jane, and, which was what everyone thought was going to be. And that kind of added the kind of up in the airedness of who was going to win Best Picture, because you had Belfast screenplay, Coda adapted screenplay, director Jane Campion. And so that was okay, well, who's going to win Best Picture?
It's crazy too to think about that Jane Campion and Chloe Zhao won back-to-back years.
Yeah, that's what everyone was talking about.
First time that had happened. And now there's 3 women with Best Directors, with Catherine Bigelow, Chloe Zhao, and Jane Campion. So we get to the final category, and you have Liza Minnelli and Lady Gaga introduce it.
And so they ended up announcing Best Picture, or Liza did, and then it ended up being Coda.
And she got it right.
Yeah.
Unlike Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway. Anyways, Coda won. That was another moment that we'll play right now from our reactions.
And the Oscar goes to... Okay, Coda.
That's amazing! Oh, that's so good. Anyone, you go $50.
Made me super happy that Coda won. And again, that's another, I feel like people are going to forget that Coda won this year with everything that happened. And it's still, I felt happy, but I think we were still trying to figure out the events of the night and how it all came to be and all of that. But it does make Apple the first streamer to win Best Picture. Although they didn't produce it, they bought it at Sundance for $25 million. So they didn't really see it from the very beginning to the end.
Take that, Netflix. Doesn't matter.
But what's interesting about the Coda win is that Coda winning may have changed the route of how you get to Best Picture, because it used to be that to campaign for it, meaning because there's strategy to this. I know a lot of people may not think that, but there is strategy to how you to win Best Picture. not only do you have to campaign for it, but it used to be that you needed to be released in a movie theater. Like that was the mandatory thing. And because of the pandemic and how things have obviously changed and streaming sort of has now become the main thing that people are doing rather than going to the movie theater, what Coda did was, I think it came out in August and it was released both on Apple and in the movie theaters at the same time, which Netflix typically does in the theater and then it goes to streaming like 3 weeks after it came out in the theater. Coda comes out at the same time as it streams and it comes out early, so people sort of forgot about it. And that's why it wasn't really talked about much leading up to award season. It also didn't go to any festivals. You have all the fall festivals like Telluride, where people usually submit their films that they want to be considered for the Oscars because that's sort of another step to getting Best Picture. So Coda doesn't do that either. But what they do too is that they expand leading up to the holiday season. So it gets released in LA, New York, the big markets. Okay. And then by holiday season, it's in more and more theaters. And so people start seeing it by the end of last year, which is the perfect time, leading up to award season, because award season really starts, January of the beginning of the year. And so people are speculating that maybe Coda winning is a sign of a new strategy now, that you don't have to go be released in the movie theater first, that you don't have to go to all these festivals. Because also Coda is the first Sundance film to ever win Best Picture.
People making movies have had to shift kind of their entire, not just how they market for Best Picture, but just how they market their movies in general. Because they'll be like, okay, do we want to do only movie theaters? Do we want to do only streaming? Do we want to do both? Do we want to do one first and then the other one? So it's kind of not only changed the way you market a movie for award season, but it's changed how you market a movie.
I don't like the fact that if it is going to maybe change the strategies of some of these streamers, is that it's another nail in the coffin for movie theaters, that it's going to be less and less about going to the movie theater. And you are going to have streamers, I bet, release at the same time online than they are going to be in movie theaters.
But I think you still have these films like The Batman where you have to see it in the movie theater. Like you can't get the same effect if you watch it at home. And I think people recognize that with like the very obvious movies like The Batman. Like Coda, I feel like you could have seen it in the theater, you could have seen it at home. Like I saw it at home. Same with The Power of the Dog would have been cool in the theater just because the cinematography was really good, I think. And I think Tragedy of Macbeth would have been really great in the theater too. So I think all of these kind of like visually striking movies, people kind of know like, oh, I should see this in the theater.
It kind of brings up that question of film festivals, because one of the reasons why film festivals have survived is because the critical darlings, as we like to call them, usually are released in film festivals before anywhere else. And so if that's not the case with Coda just bypassing all that, it may change the way that some distributors think of like, well, this is a critical darling, but why am I going to like send my crew to like, Telluride and Toronto to save money where I could just stream it the same day?
And that was another like frustrating thing, was that some of them, like The Worst Person in the World, didn't get here till like a month ago or like 2 months ago or whatever,
right.
When like I feel like everyone else but me had seen it. And I was just like, fuck, like when am I going to see this movie?
Here's a question I was thinking of on the way here. Do you think, I don't think Coda was the best picture. I just voted for it because I thought it would win. There's an argument to be made that maybe Coda gets sort of forgotten as best picture because it doesn't have like that staple, because it's so, like you said, you called it so pure to Oscars.
Right.
And it isn't like a Scorsese film, and it's not like, a Coppola film, or, like one of those that you see it and you're like, okay, that's like Oscar worthy. Do you think it's going to get lost in the sands of time, that people are going to forget? Maybe kind of like The Artist?
The Artist was a silent movie, and Coda is kind of a silent movie, besides like the music and everything. So I feel like, I don't know. I feel like with Coda, it could go either way. Like, because it is a movie where there's primarily ASL, but like, you have speaking and music and stuff, it could be forgotten. And because it's so pure, it could be forgotten. But it could also do the complete opposite and be remembered because of all of those things. And I think between Coda and the artist, I don't think the artist translated well to home video. Like I watched it at home and I was like, it's kind of boring. Like that was one of those movies where you had to be in the theater. And I feel like with Coda, that could just be on, I feel like that's just going to be on TBS like forever or something, or TNT. And people are just going to watch it because they like watching it, So I feel like Coda has more of a longevity.
I think it'll be a sign of the times too, where it's kind of a bookmark with all the craziness that we've been experiencing in the world. That here came this movie that was very wholesome and positive, and made you feel good, and versus like the alternatives, which are like if I had to vote, I'm torn between like Drive My Car and The Worst Person in the World, which wasn't even nominated.
Yeah.
But to me, those movies I feel were better. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, because I feel like they made you feel more complex feelings within yourself. Versus, Coda is just it's a great movie, but it was just kind of no pun intended, one note in what you were feeling, which is, there was conflict and stuff like that, but it came to a very wholesome resolution. Whereas, something like Drive My Car or The Worst Person in the World or even Belfast, like you have these like complex emotions where you don't really know how to feel when the movie ends. And I feel like sometimes those are the best movies, is where you kind of are still questioning how you should feel about it, weeks after you've seen it.
I think Coda is built for the masses. So I think more people are going to seek it out and enjoy it.
Which is good, because then I feel like more people will seek out future Academy Award nominated movies, because there could always be a Coda in there.
Exactly. The ratings came in, and again, we made a lot of hoopla, rightfully so, though, of cutting out 8 categories from the broadcast. I was actually wrong. In the last spot, I said that there was only 4, but there was like 8.
I told you there was 8,
right.
and you said, yeah.
Yeah. It didn't work because, again, we said that it ran 40 minutes too long. The ratings were up 56%, which is a good thing. But also, it's still the second least watched Oscars. It only had 16.6 million people. You would have thought that The Incident would have had a spike, but it didn't really. What I love, though, is guess where the highest peak was of viewership? Guess what category it was?
Supporting actor.
Mm-hmm.
Go
so
Troy.
When Troy Custer took home Best Supporting Actor, the viewership spiked to 17.7 million viewers.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's the most that watched it. And just a little bit of history, still the highest rated Oscars of all time is the 1998 Oscars, where a little movie called Titanic won Best Picture. That was watched by over 40 million people.
Wow.
Now, here's what I'm going to say about this whole rating shit. The problem that the Academy to me has is that they're trying to garner these massive numbers.
And they're trying to get the young,
Maybe even more important than the high numbers. But here's the thing. It's never going to get to those numbers ever again.
No.
The reason why 40 plus million people watched the Oscars in 1998, because that was the only thing really to watch on a Sunday. Now we have streaming, we have the internet, we have TikTok, we have all these other things that we could be doing instead of watching the Oscars. So this idea that the Academy has to like, oh, let's return it to its like higher place and number, it's never going to get there. So I think programming the Oscars and producing the Oscars, that shouldn't be the priority. The priority should be, let's make a show about loving movies and talk about why we love movies and honor the people that make these movies. That should be it. It's as simple as that.
Who was the host in 1998?
Billy Crystal. Because
that's right. I remember the opening.
He comes out and he's on the king of the world. And that's another thing I guess I'll briefly say, but maybe save it for next year's Oscars podcast, is that can we just bring Billy back to like just host it?
I am so
to the end of time.
Upset that the original trio that was supposed to host the Oscars was Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez.
Yeah.
That would have been so good. That would have been
Really
like the
great.
perfect bridging between like the old generation and like the new generation without making it like tacky. Just because I've seen Only Murders in the Building and they work together so well and they're so good at like playing off of each other like comedy wise that I feel like that would have worked so well.
Note to producers that are doing it for next year that maybe you're listening, maybe go with that next year. Before we wrap up, our thoughts on the 2022 Oscar ceremony. I want to talk about just the worst or shocking moments in Oscar history because that's been a topic of conversation. And even leading up to the Oscars every year, there's always these lists of like the worst moments and all that. Obviously, with the incident that happened this year, it's even more of a topic. Do you remember just off the top of your head, like just moments that stuck out to you?
Well, the first one that comes to my head is the La La Land Moonlight switcheroo. I don't know if that was like a worst moment, but it's definitely a memorable one.
I would say shocking.
And shocking. But that was like a good shocking moment, you know?
It was, yeah.
I don't know. That's literally the only one that comes to my head right now.
I mean, I think the bigger ones were before our time. Like when you think about Marlon Brando's boycott
Right.
for The Godfather.
That's another one, yeah.
Where he had Sacheen Littlefeather rejected, and basically it was his protest again how Native Americans are portrayed in film and television shows.
And John Wayne was going to kick her ass for it.
Yeah, but that's the story for another day.
Yeah.
And then Robert Opel, who streaked in 1974.
Oh, that's right.
He just kind of ran through for a quick minute. But I mean, obviously these are starting to pale in comparison to like what we saw on Sunday. Oh, here was one that wasn't a shocking moment. Well, it was shocking, but also going back to what we just talked about overproducing the Oscars for moments. Remember what happened last year? How the show ended? Do you have any clue?
No.
So they decided to not end with Best Picture. They ended with Best Actor because they assumed that Chadwick Boseman was going to win.
Oh, fuck. I forgot about that.
Anthony Hopkins wins, who wasn't even there.
Yeah.
And then Joaquin was giving out an award, and he's like, we accept the award. And then the show just kind of ended
That's
on
right.
The Biggest Downer.
Wow, I totally forgot about that.
What about James Franco hosting?
No.
I forgot. I just blocked that year out of my brain. And today I rewatched clips of it. It's so
What year was
fucking
that?
terrible. 2011. How that show got aired in the first place is beyond me. I'll ask one final question before we give our thoughts. Where do you think the Oscars go from here? As in, do they need to change things up again? Do we need to create a fence around the presenter's podium in case someone attacks? The Oscars are sort of trying to reinvent themselves, but
I will say this. If there's any good to come out of this year, I think that more people will watch next year just because they're going to be like, what the fuck is going to happen? I think they should just not do the fan shit again because that failed.
Agree.
The cutting category, or not cutting categories, but like pre-recording categories and like cutting people off as they're like mid-speech, like way before they should. Just in the interest of saving time, I think that they should know that just doesn't work anymore. Because how many years have they tried it with, different things?
I think it was 2019 where they were going to do it, but there was a big remember 2019?
Yeah.
There was going to be a big backlash, and they ended up, before the ceremony, they went back on what they were going to do and
and I think they
presented
should
them all.
stop trying to make it 3 hours. They should just be like, look, everyone expects this to last forever anyway. And
Yes.
let's just go with the flow, see what happens, And then as far as hosting, they need to figure out kind of, like we were talking about, a way to bridge the gap between having a diverse team of hosts, having someone to appeal to a younger audience, having someone appeal to the older audience, and just kind of like figure out what the formula there is.
You know who I think you should host next year?
Who?
Chris Rock.
He's definitely going to be back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's definitely going to be
Yeah.
back. I agree with pretty much everything that you said. I think that since we're living in different times and there's different ways to view things, ABC was responsible for, I don't know if they threw down their fist and said, we're not going to show these categories, or if they recommended it and then the producers took it and went with it. But I think that the Academy should say goodbye to ABC. And I think that they should find a streamer and stream it.
I was going to mention that earlier is because they're streaming on Hulu. And I was going to ask if the numbers of people watching took into account the Hulu streams, which I don't know if they do. But yeah, I totally agree. I feel like it might be more popular if it's on a streaming site because the people that want to watch it will watch it. And, you know, the people that complain about being 4 hours long don't have to watch it. So it's like,
Yeah.
because even now, like when people complain about it being 4 hours long, it's like you could just watch something else. Like
Right.
what's on ABC on Sundays? I don't know. So, but yeah, I think that might be the future is, you know, everything else is being streamed.
Whoever like would stream it, they could really sell the crap out of it. You know,
I think it would be more accessible too, because I had to get fucking Fubo to stream the Oscars because Sling doesn't carry ABC. And a lot of streamers don't carry ABC, you know? So I feel like it would be a lot more accessible to people.
and they could really sell the shit out of it, like make it one of their yearly programming things. You know, like now Apple's going to be showing Major League Baseball on Friday nights.
Yeah.
Amazon's going to have the NFL on Thursday nights, which is crazy to think about.
That is crazy, yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like, I feel like if a streamer took it up, they could really sell it and, you know, use all the social media. Like you could do all the TikTok videos to your heart's content to really sell it. I think trying to popularize it and make it this, creating these moments, forcibly creating these moments is not the route to go. It doesn't work. You're better off with the organic moments because they're always, and I hate to use the Will Smith moment, but they're always more shocking and
it's what's being talked about.
And it's what's being talked about rather than like, hey, let's create this, let's change up the categories and do best actor because we think he's gonna win.
Or let's do a 50th anniversary Godfather thing that nobody talked about.
Yeah, exactly. So final thoughts on the craziest Oscars that I can remember seeing in my life?
I can't wait till next year. Pretty much that's it.
You've realized that this story, we're going to be talking about it for the rest of our lives. It's going to be...
we're still talking about Moonlight and La La Land.
Yeah, but this was like
and
way
that was just
worse.
that. No, I know. I'm saying.
This is much worse.
Well, we're still talking about Marlon Brando.
That's what I'm saying. We're going to be talking about this for the rest of our lives. It's going to be shitty to keep talking about this. And it's going to come up, like I said, every year. There's a worst moments list for the Oscars. And it's going to be number one for, I hope forever, because I don't want to talk about another moment like that. I'd rather talk about reading the envelope wrong or, you know, a shocking twist of a nominee winning when they shouldn't have. That wasn't expected. But I mean, talking about, you know, people hitting each other in an award show, it's super unfortunate, but
it is what it is.
We are here. We're here.
Thanks again for listening to our recap of the 2022 Oscars. Again, if you haven't already signed up, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel where we do these live podcasts that you can watch. So you can watch all of our reactions in real time. And then if you haven't already followed us on Instagram, on Twitter at Cut Movie Pod. Also, we're streaming on all platforms where you can find your favorite podcasts and you can go back and listen to our past episodes. We've done Titanic. We've done
Almost Famous,
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, A League of Their Own. We've done Pig. So there's a lot of really, really good stuff for you guys to listen to if you really enjoy this podcast. So thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the next one. Cut. That's a wrap.